Welcome, everyone. Dr. Thor here, and welcome to Gnosis. Well, some very interesting developments have happened on this past day, the December 20th, 2019. The famous New Age alternative scientist, Dr. Flanagan, has passed away. He has died at the age of 75. Well, Flanagan was a very interesting man, and apparently a child genius who devised some sort of systems and was somehow then the government was notified of him, and supposedly the government was keeping records of all young geniuses like this and was watching them, and his school notified the Pentagon that he was working on some sort of thing as a young child, so it is. And I don't want to go into the details of that. Everybody can look these things up. He's famous for his pyramid research, where he wrote 2 books on pyramid powers and its many benefits. He also talked about special waters and had a complete line of supplements that you put into water, pretty much crystallized water. He claimed all these great things from it, and so forth. So he's pretty much known for that and the writing another book. He hasn't really written all that many books when you really look at his lifespan and what he was involved in when it comes down to everything. And other interesting research about him. I mean, he's been involved in this area. He was he invented a device called a neurophone, which, interesting, Andrei Pusharek, which I believe invented it first, got into a legal battle, and Flanagan was given the rights to it, which I don't believe is correct. But one thing, they're always getting out there taunting one of the most interesting areas of life in general, and that's long life. Yet, I've noticed, and I thought that Patrick Flanagan was pushing 90 by the way he looked. He looks like a very old man, and has been for the last 10 or 15 years. Basically, he's 75 years old, which isn't even old in this day and age in terms of the masses of people in the United States that have a life expectancy of 78. So the average guy lives to be 78 today. And many people are living into their late 80s now and into their early 90s. So it is not uncommon, but we got to remember its average life expectancy. But I'll get into that in a minute. I mean, there are people who live to be 93. One of them is, there's many people that do it, but Patrick Mackney, the star of the British TV series The Avengers, who grew up on tea and crumpets and was a nudist, lived to be 93. So I guess there's something to nudism and tea that maybe we should start a cult with and sell bottles for $50 each or $30 or whatever they are to give you those energies. I've studied these people now that I've reached a particular age that have been involved and have studied these people for many years and listened to all their claims and them hawking their stuff. This is just another one on top of a pile of many other people that have died young for one reason or another, claiming they have these immortality secrets. And when it's better off just to, as I mentioned, become a Patrick Mackney nudist, or move to Italy or Japan, who have the longest lifespans. And seems to me that'd be cheaper than all of this other stuff that they claim. One of the things is that you have to be careful here. There's pros and cons of all of this. But here's a guy who's always been touting how great he's found these antioxidants. And he actually, in 2012, did a big interview on how to live forever and how to extend your life. Well, didn't work, did it, Pat? So the whole idea is that it's enraging to me as an alternative scientist who has figured out so many things and has a modicum of followers, while people like this who are basically perpetrating a disservice to people. Now, whether their products are completely useless is unknown. They'd have to really be tested, and there doesn't seem to be anybody testing these things. Simple tests can be made on growing items. I've done some preliminary research on Willard water and have gotten some pretty good results. I've used Flanagan's crystal waters for many years now, and on and off, and have noticed no results whatsoever. I haven't noticed any great results from Willard water either, but it's hard to determine and stuff like this, but not when it comes to these people that flap their mouth. And if he could get away with it, he would make all sorts of claims. And what's interesting is that last year in 2018, the FDA did go to his facilities and actually, quote, raid them and found all sorts of problems, and he got into all sorts of problems with the FDA because of labeling and claims and other things. Well, of course, that's not a condemnation. The FDA generally raids people that have effective products. It's almost an honor. And the fact that they suppress everything to begin with that works because of the medical mafia certainly isn't a condemnation. It's just another series of things. And of course, Flanagan's been around for years and years producing all this stuff, so I guess he was due. And I don't know who made the complaints or whether this was done or how that actually works. But it's just one of many things he talks about. But here we go again. Another one is Dr. Fred Bell. Now, here's a guy who claimed he had the secrets to longevity with his particular energy tools and all these special supplements that he made and all these sacred geometry. And they're all fascinating stuff, just like Flanagan's stuff is fascinating as a adult researching toy, but you never know what works. And of course, life isn't about everything working for everybody. Some people will tell you they have wonderful results from things and other people not. Can anybody be trusted on either side? No. Because they're not good judges or anything, and everybody wants something to work. So if for some reason you take something and feel better or it helps you a little bit, oh yeah, it was that was it, it's the most wonderful thing in the world. And then of course a few years later you find out it wasn't very helpful. So we just don't know, and we don't know what the long-term effects of any of this stuff is. I believe that the long-term effects of using similar type products could be very valuable. You don't know. It's like taking vitamins. Do you know if they help you? Are you sick now? Are you going to live longer because of them? Well, we don't know. So to a certain extent, you're doing your own research, but there is detailed ways of determining what is good for your body and testing things. So you don't really waste thousands and thousands of dollars on products that are really not helpful. And don't think that everything is just innate, that it has no effect. So even taking huge quantities of vitamins deteriorates your body. It has to go through your liver, your kidneys. Your body works on kicking it out all the time. So taking a lot of vitamins that you don't need is actually detrimental to your energy bodies. I don't think a lot of people understand that. Oh, more of it, well, it doesn't hurt you. Well, it does hurt you indirectly. It's not toxic, but your body's working hard to get rid of it, and it's more stuff in your kidneys and livers that really is weakening them ultimately because you're overworking them. So what does this mean with Flanagan and so many other people? As I said, before he died, he looked like he was 85 or 90. Certainly wasn't helping his physical looks. He apparently was thin. We don't really know what the cause of death is right at this particular point. I'm assuming it's heart attacks, etc. But even if it wasn't heart attacks, it was cancer or something else. Well, the point is that his technologies, which he was supposed to be connected to, and of course knew everybody in the industry of healing, didn't work for him. And again, is this a wholesale condemnation of everything? No, it isn't. Everything works different for everybody, and as I said, certain things which he invents may work for a lot of other people, but not for him. And this is something, of course, as a person who has authored over 25 books, been on numerous BBC, CNN, Art Bell Show, and have 5 courses, I'm well aware and have sold many products for over 40 years now, know that certain things work well for certain people and other ones not. And certain things that I like don't work for other people, and certain things that don't work for me work for other people. I am not a big fan of subliminal programming and tapes, yet I've had many people come to me and say how wonderful subliminal audios are. I've used them for many years with no result. That doesn't mean they don't work. So we need to understand that, but we also have to look at these people and who they are. What has he left? Now, he's been a government whore for like most of these people. He did the famous research with the dolphins that I believe was made into a movie, which is not based on his research, but based on the general field, with George C. Scott about using dolphins and the military. And of course, just what we need to do. Let's corrupt all the animal world and make them as scummy as we are. And of course, he was in helping that. He was helping all of these government industries, which they all work for, directly or indirectly. And of course, in his later years, since he didn't produce much of anything, I mean, his Neurophone, his waters, and everything else. I mean, this is research that was done literally 40, 50 years ago. I mean, nothing really has come from him. I had a Neurophone, and I didn't find that it functioned well at all. Again, it was something that was talked about as fantastic by many people, and I found it personally to be mediocre. It doesn't seem to be something that caught on or anything else. He wrote a book about it to promote it like everybody does in these fields, which was in the late 80s and into the 90s, and there was a flurry of immediate purchasing, and then of course the price was very expensive. I believe $1,500 to $2,000 for the Neurophone is selling for now. Pretty much quelched that, and I haven't really heard much about the Neurophone in general, except for those people selling it. So here we go again with a lot of hype, a lot of things. He was selling this crystalline additive to water and a few tablets and powders. And of course, these things were made for pennies that he was selling for quite high prices. I believe the average, and the price went up this year from what was notified to different people out there. I believe it was $39 for a 2 or 3 ounce bottle. I'm not entirely sure there. Of course, you're putting drops. It does last a fairly long period of time. But I can tell you right now that cost of that was actually pennies to manufacture it, as most things are. And he put them in plastic bottles, showing that he doesn't really even understand the plastic toxicity problems that are out there as well. So all of these things, here is another glorified hero. He's written several books, did some very fascinating studies on pyramids, being pretty much the first person to come out and promote those heavily. He wrote 2 books on that. He also, again, then followed up with the elixir of life. He claimed the secrets of the long life and everything else from the different waters he studied around the world. Well, he certainly didn't find it. At least he could not overcome his own genetics, his own DNA, which certainly he would be familiar with, so that he could live past 75. And as he said, I don't really care what he died of, unless he was killed in an accident, it really doesn't count. You die, you die. And whether it's from a heart attack or disease or any other physical problem, it doesn't matter. 75 is not the even acceptable lifespan in one of the worst places on the planet, which is the U.S., which, by the way, has went down a few years. So now it's probably, instead of 78, it's probably 77, 76. But he still, at 75, didn't make. And as I said, there's a lot of people living into their, easily, people who take care of themselves in advance, live into 86 to their early 90s. So it goes on and on with so many people. And as I mentioned, the same thing with Fred Bell, who had all these different things and died what apparently was from a heart attack under mysterious circumstances. Now, that's very interesting. I don't know of any mysterious circumstances with Flanagan. Fred Bell, Dr. Fred Bell, who's another fascinating guy with fascinating research. And all these people I support as researchers, but we got to be careful of getting on somebody's train and paying them lots of money for fantasy belief systems that they try and back up with so-called science. Both traditional science is a fraud, and so is alternative science. They're complete, total frauds based on people who are just really making sure they continue to get a paycheck. And it takes a very advanced person who's reached the state of gnosis to figure out what is the facts of it all. So certainly Flanagan in my book has produced very little, and his interesting books on pyramids is something that has yet to be proven if any of this stuff can work for anybody else. So we need it. But as I said, with Fred Bell's another one. But he died after talking about death rays, which apparently has happened to many people talking about death rays, that they then die afterwards. He died the next day after doing an interview on Jesse Ventura talking about death rays. But he had all these supplements and these protection and these tools, and none of it worked for him apparently. He was taking special of his own supplements that were going to keep, but he looked old, Dr. Fred Bell. He was out of shape with a big belly, so he didn't show a person that was really taking care of much of his health because he wasn't physically fit. And if you're not physically fit and you're well, that means you're just kind of lazy. And if you're gaining weight and everything else, it means you're eating foods that are inappropriate and bad for you. And if you think that's going to be solved by taking some supplements alone and wearing things, well, it's not. You have to do everything. So what do we need to judge from that? Certainly, it was suspicious, and he's another guy that died young for what is life expectancy. He died around the age of 69, even more pathetic. So, and certainly didn't look much younger than that. So we are stuck in this reality yet again. So it's always sad to see people who are out there doing things, passing away. But, most of these people aren't really doing any serious work anymore. Flanagan was sitting back and not really doing much, hasn't written any new books, hasn't produced any new products. He's out there, I'm assuming, going to New Age shows, hawking his crystal products that make him a fortune, running his basic institute, developing more products to make money with, and not really getting out there. Certainly much isn't known of anything that he was potentially doing here in the recent years. It's all the same old stuff, and of course he has his website selling his products, etc. But there isn't really much to that. So, other than being a business. So, as well as everything else that goes with him, this is not a mysterious death like Dr. Fred Bell was from what we know at this point. As usual, very little information was released by his organization except the fact that he did pass and apparently was extremely sick for the last few months. So while this was not the case with Dr. Fred Bell, who appeared to be in excellent shape up until this particular interview. But, heart attacks can knock you down at any time, and these also can be generated from governmental sources. I mean, it's happened to several people in the recent months and years here who are noted UFO researchers. Stanton Freeman died of a heart attack. Again, he was a person, I believe, at least pushing 70, maybe a little more, at an airport. So the whole idea, we can all say that this is contrived and these are government hits, and they certainly could be. There's certainly ways of doing this, just as what happened to Fred Bell. And certainly, but why now? Why at their such late age? And quite frankly, these people are not a threat to anybody. And they basically are working with and controlled by the governmental people that would be doing this. I mean, Do they really need to take these kind of people out at this particular time, at this late of an age? Unless they were going to release certain information, then that could be. Now, this is a problem. You got to, as people get older, they don't care and they release what's considered classified information. They figure they're at the end of their life, and why not do it now? This seems to be a case with a lot of people, and a typical case, deathbed confessions that people make, so to speak. But when people get older, they tend not to want to keep things as secret as in the past. So this may be an issue. I mean, there's a lot of things going on here, and we live in such a corrupt, evil world that it's a real problem. But these people haven't really done much to stop that. Most of them, like Hal Puthoff and all these other ones, SRI, Russell Targ, etc. All of these people, have basically filled their pockets over an open area. I mean, what kind of notoriety would Puthoff and Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ would have got as laser scientists, even though they invented it and probably are getting paid large royalties from their inventions? Would they ever have been celebrities? Would they have done anything interesting? Would they have gotten future money for their play studies like Hal Puthoff is doing with fake space propulsion and communication? I doubt it. It's the fact that they went into this field and took on a modicum of criticism while filling their pockets. So, they've all benefited from this, and we all have to understand that in the bigger picture here. And what have they really done, and what have they left? Well, Flanagan now won't be writing anymore, and he hasn't left much of anything. He made an awful lot of tapes at one time, audio cassette tapes. Who knows what's happened to these? They certainly are not available as far as I understand. So we don't know anything about his lectures. He didn't bother to reproduce those because he couldn't make any money from them. And this goes with everybody. What has any of these people done? Hal Puthoff has now joined a giant UFO fantasy society, which is full of Central Intelligence agents that are telling you they're Central. They don't even hide it anymore. And of course, that's his big input. Russell Targ, and they're all very sick. Hal Puthoff is 82. Russell Targ, not sick, I should say. They're all old. I mean, he's 83 years old. Russell Targ. Hal Puthoff is 83. Russell Targ is in his 70s and almost died a few years ago with a serious heart problem, and now is a pacemaker. The point is, these are all old men. They've done what they and have produced ultimately for their many, many years being involved, and their enslavement to the government have not been able to, and certainly haven't tried to get much information out of value to anybody. So here's another case. Patrick Flanagan, dead at 75. The elixir of life, the miracle crystal waters, didn't save him. Remember, everybody, there is no reality until the occult scientist manifests them. Until next time.